Welcome to the Journal Editorial Report. I'm Paul Gigot. That was President Obama in his State of the Union address Wednesday night, promising to make jobs his #1 priority in the coming year. But will the policies he's proposing really put Americans back to work? Joining the panel this week, Wall Street Journal columnist and deputy editor Dan Henninger, columnist Mary Anastasia O'Grady, assistant editorial page editor James Freeman, and senior economics writer Steve Moore. So, Steve, President downplaying a little bit health care and cap and trade on the agenda from a year ago, pressing jobs. You must be happy. What do you think of his jobs agenda?
Well, look, I thought we were going to see an Obama 2.0 in this State of the Union speech with a kind of new message that was more moderated, that was more oriented towards reaching out across the aisle to the Republicans. But that's not exactly what I heard. I heard a lot of blaming George Bush for the problems of the last 8 years. I think the president did say, look, we're going to move forward with health care and a lot of the other jobs initiatives, the spending initiatives that were the hallmark of his first year. So I would say that I didn't see the change agenda that you might have thought after what happened in Massachusetts.
Well, wait a minute. He proposed a capital gains tax cut for small business. He also said, and you've been telling me for months, that small business can't get credit, so he proposed $30 billion from TARP to go to community banks for lending. Don't you think those will make a difference?
No, I really don't. I think if you look at those tax cuts, they're all small ball, Paul. We've always believed that the way to get growth going is to cut marginal tax rates for small businesses and investors. The one thing that the Barack Obama administration will not do is cut tax rates, which is probably what the economy needs most right now.
Well, Mary, fourth quarter GDP came in. The economy grew 5.7% after only 2.2% in the third quarter. But that suggests we really do have a recovery here that's underway. Good news, no?
Well, I don't know if you can suggest that it's a recovery. I mean, what you know is that
5.7%. It's growing. The economy is at least growing.
The economy grew in the fourth quarter because inventories were drawn down. There was the holiday season, but we don't know if the business sector of the economy is actually getting up on its feet and ready to go again. And I agree with Steve that there was something disappointing in that speech, especially because, look, we have to give him credit for acknowledging that taxes are a burden for business, and that's a big gain for the Obama administration. But targeted tax cuts have never been a good thing. I mean, I looked at the speech and said, well, let's see, what do we have here? A more complex tax code and more government programs. How can, if you're trying to run a business, how can that be positive? I mean, you have to live with the fear that there are going to be more mandates coming from government in health care, more mandates coming, for example, in this idea he has of a mandatory IRA, individual retirement account. That would add an administrative burden.
Those are burdens on small business.
And taxes and regulation are the problem for business.
I was struck, James. The president was really at pains to say, look, I didn't raise taxes. I cut taxes. I cut taxes on this, and this, which is, I think, technically true in this first year. He's promising to raise taxes on 2011, but so far he hasn't. So there's a recognition there, at least, of a political vulnerability.
Yeah, and I got to say, I'm more optimistic on fourth quarter GDP. I think 5.7% is great. And really, I don't think he needs a jobs bill on his desk. He just needs a memo dropped on his desk saying, announce Obamacare is dead, cap and trade is dead. The economy's natural healing powers are asserting themselves, and I think if Washington would get out of the way, this will work out great.
There is, Dan, this push-me-pull-you message. On the one hand, he really needs the private sector to grow and wants to. On the other hand, he's saying, look, I want you to grow, I want you to invest. On the other hand, he's still saying, I want to pass health care, that's going to put new costs. I want to put cap and trade, that's going to raise energy prices. I still want to make it easier to unionize, that's going to raise your labor costs. So if you're a businessman or woman, and you hear that speech, what message are you getting?
And mixed message at best, I think. And, his primary responsibility is Washington. And the federal budget spending is now up to nearly 25% of GDP. It's just almost a historic high in our time. Revenue is down to 14% of GDP, in part because of the recession. But between that, you have a massive deficit pushed by all the spending in the past year. And that is something that Congress is very, very nervous about because of the Massachusetts vote. The public is nervous about the size of the deficit. He wanted Congress to create a commission. Congress refused to do that. He's going to do it on its own. And I think that probably what he's going to do is get some wise men together to suggest something like revenue triggers, tax increase triggers at certain points in the deficit. There's got to be a tax increase in the future somewhere.
Steve, one of the president's goals here with his jobs agenda, they're saying at the White House, is to get Republican votes, to get off sort of the Democrat-only governance that's happened in the first year and see if they can get some Republicans to join them. Isn't he putting Republicans in a pretty difficult spot because Republicans have been criticizing for the whole first year for lacking a jobs agenda?
You know, I thought the most striking thing about that speech was that if the goal was to reach across the aisle and get Republicans into the fold, I'm not sure he accomplished that. Some of the initiatives are things that the Republicans will go for, some of those tax credits for small businesses and for hiring. But it strikes me that the big issue, of course, for the next couple of weeks is what the president will do on health care. There's a lot of talk, as you know, right now about the Democrats trying to ram this same bill through with 51 votes.
Steve,
they may try to do that.
They're going to push that off for a few weeks so they can focus on this jobs bill. What do the Republicans do, though? Are they going to vote for this jobs agenda?
I think if I were advising the Republicans, what I'd say is come forward with your own alternative agenda, which would be cutting the corporate and personal income tax rates to 25%. Let's be competitive on tax rates. That has been proven over the last 40 years to be the most successful job stimulus bill of all.
All right, and I assume vote against the jobs bill. All right, when we come back.